be more specific? Which report is that?
I'm referring to the report that was prepared for the court by Dr. Radrick, which I believe has been identified as Exhibit 14.
Thank you. And can you explain in more detail sort of what you think of the report? What are your of the conclusions that are drawn by Mr. Radrick?
Yes, the report at the bottom of the second page makes a statement that this analysis demonstrates an undervote of 57 votes. And I completely disagree with that conclusion. The report does not demonstrate that. The report asserts it, but that is all that it does. It makes no effort to use even the most rudimentary statistical approaches to obtain information that would support that conclusion. And I would particularly say that in professional analyses like these, the first step would always be to examine the possibility that the small change we see here, the 3.66% between 915 and the other two, that could have arisen by chance. And there's a range of tools to do that. It would have been the first step. This analysis makes not even the slightest attempt to undertake what would have been a rudimentary first step in any such analysis. So it remains really simply an assertion of a result by Mr. Radrick in his report.
Are there any other methodological flaws in Mr. Radrick's approach?
Well, I think the fundamental methodological flaw is there is no research methodology applied to try to increase the amount of information. The fact that the turnout was slightly different in precinct 915 as opposed to 910 and 920 is something that's public information. So the report did not provide that as new information, and the arithmetic computation of applying that to the number of voters, again, is straightforward arithmetic. That's all that the report does. And I think that to have an expert not to use what are well-established techniques to try to find support for his hypothesis that there's a connection between the actions of the Division of Elections and the turnout in precinct 915 simply means that the report provides no new information to the court with respect to the turnout in 915.
Would it be, if you wanted to try to answer the question of whether the lack of notice or any deficiencies in notice provided by the Division of Elections had affected the turnout in precinct 915, would you need to use a statistical analysis to answer that question?
I think the most obvious thing to do would be to use a statistical analysis to gather, for example, data on turnout in these and other precincts in previous elections, and to understand the point is that obviously 910 and 920, which are asserted to be identical, have a difference of about a half a percentage point in the turnout. The question is 3% something that could have happened by chance? And one could look at previous turnout information in these precincts and in other precincts, and perhaps also information from other precincts across Anchorage to say, what is the natural variation in the turnout? Could this 3% have arisen by chance? So yes, it would have been an obvious thing to go out and collect data on previous elections and perhaps also on the current elections and try to use that information to determine, could this have arisen by chance? If you can show that it was unlikely to have arisen by chance, then you could move on to the next step. Can I find evidence that supports a causal connection? But this analysis doesn't even try to do the first step of critically looking at the question, could this have arisen by chance?
But Mr. Radrick did look at other precincts from this election. He picks the two neighboring precincts. Is that a reasonable sample size for an analysis?
Well, a sample size of 2 in the case of 910 and 920 is obviously extremely small. And there is a lot more information available about voter turnout, and there's not really a reason in my mind to limit the analysis to picking this very simple calculation.
Based on your expertise and experience, how accurate or reliable do you think Dr. Riedrich's estimate of the impact on turnout is?
Again, Dr. Riedrich does the arithmetic correctly, but there's no analysis that says this could not have arisen by chance. And that is really the first standard of asking what's the reliability of the information. Because the approach that Dr. Riedrich has taken would not be considered a valid argument in any professional setting.
Thank you, Dr. Townsend. I have no more questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Seton-Walsh. Dr. Townsend, the other attorneys may have some questions for you. Ms. Stone.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Dr. Townsend. You testified this morning that you wanted to testify after you reviewed the contents of Mr. Riedrich's report. How did you obtain Mr. Riedrich's report?
I was excuse me? Oh, I thought I heard someone say something. I was initially provided a copy of the report by, I believe it was Ms. Alexander, in a question of saying if the state were interested in having me as an expert witness, was this something I could comment on?
And what did you review in preparation for your report and testimony today?
I reviewed the report as presented.
And that's the only document you reviewed?
Yes, specifically for this analysis.
And do you have any specialized knowledge or skill with regard to analyzing elections?
I'm not sure what qualifies as specialized knowledge. As an undergraduate, I was initially a political science major, and I took a course in survey design, survey administration, and that particular course has been very important throughout my career in understanding how surveys are done, including political surveys, economic surveys, and other kinds of social science surveys.
You criticized Dr. Riedrich's statistical analysis, but it's correct that you didn't undertake the statistical analysis that you said would be proper in this case. Is that correct?
I was not asked to do that.
And what is your understanding of why Mr. Riedrich picked the precincts that he did in his report?
I do not have any reason other than Mr. Riedrich's statement that he felt because they were next to the 2 districts, they were comparable. The 2 districts were next to 915, they were comparable.
Have you ever performed any analysis regarding election results after your graduation from undergrad?
I don't think so.
So in fact, you just stated that you didn't understand why he picked the precincts, and you failed to address the underlying presumptions in his analysis. Isn't that correct?
I certainly addressed the underlying presumption by pointing out it is an assumption which could be tested, and he decided not to test it.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Stone. Ms. Wells.
Your Honor, Ms. Alexander is addressing this witness for the intervener.
Ms. Alexander.
I have no questions for this witness.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Seton-Walsh, any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Dr. Townsend, thank you very much for your time. You're excused and you can hang up the Zoom if you like.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.